One Punch Man Chapter 187, titled The Butterfly and the Back, features a lower portion of a bicycle as the cover page. This should give you a good idea of which familiar hero it features. We begin the chapter with a quote. "Failure in life begins when you aspire to be someone who is nothing like you." A young hero with butterfly wings and a butterfly emblem on his chest considered these words carefully. He also wondered what in the world he was even doing. Just then, he'd hear a voice over his communicator. The voice wondered if this hero, named Papillon 800, was ready, and despite his hesitance, he'd soon confirmed that he was. I'm surprised we're getting another butterfly-themed hero so soon after the introduction of Butterfly DX. On the line was Mr. McCoy. He'd admit to the young hero that he also had a bit of a bet on the man, so he better not disappoint. This only seemed to upset 800 as he'd put on his mask and urged the Hero Association executive to get things going already. And with a sinister look on his face, Mr. McCoy was more than happy to oblige, even going as far as to call it the execution of justice. But before we go any further, this video is sponsored by War Thunder, the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, available for free on PC, Xbox Series X or S, PS5, or the previous console generation. War Thunder features more than 2,000 tanks, planes, ships, and helicopters that players can control in dynamic, combined arms PvP warfare. They've got vehicles from the 1920s all the way to the present day, each one modeled down to their individual components for maximum immersion. War Thunder has an in-depth customization system for vehicles. You can apply hundreds of different camouflage types, place historical markings anywhere on your machines, or add 3D decorators, such as bushes and equipment. But if you want an anime twist, the game also lets players use community-made skins and voice packs. Are you a fan of Girls Last Tour or Genshin Impact? You can show that off in-game. And if you sign up using our link, whether you're playing on PC or console, you'll get premium account features and vehicles, 100,000 silver lions, an XP silver booster, and a unique 3D Dakimakura. So don't delay. Join right now with the link in the video description. Following this, the sides of a vehicle labeled R Transport began to unfurl in the midst of what was clearly a domestic area. The contents of the vehicle were then revealed to be a muscular and frantic chihuahua-like monster. Once that was done, Mr. McCoy urged his employee to live stream the footage to a particular venue. The underworld presentation would then begin. It was claimed that one of the Hero Association's drone cameras had discovered the appearance of a monster in M City. And thanks to the diligence of the association, several heroes were sure to be rushing in after it in a matter of moments. The disaster level of this quivering creature was presented to be that of Demon. Further making a spectacle of the situation, the announcer would additionally name the creature Shiver Wawa, which was a pretty appropriate name. The patrons would then be told to place their bets, as the multipliers for all heroic options were provided. Rather swiftly, Papillon 800 made it onto the scene while pretending to suddenly be getting into touch with the Hero Association headquarters. Reading off of a script, 800 would announce that he'd been blocked off by a monster that a single C-class like himself would not be able to handle alone. He would need reinforcements. Reading his own script over the line, Mr. McCoy would tell him that there were no other heroes in the area, so he would need to hold out for a while on his own. The crowd of spectators seems to be pretty dissatisfied with the appearance of a lone C-class hero. With the game being all about which hero kills the monster, it wasn't as fun with heroes being so disproportionately placed. A callous old man would even toy with the concept of being able to bet on the monster instead. This was hero gambling. It was something that the association held as a secret source of income. But at times, the matches were rigged in a way that only made it possible for the major sponsors to win. And that was the case today. Looking at his soon-to-be opponent, 800 was unimpressed by the pitiful-looking monster they'd claimed to be a disaster-level demon. In reality though, it was really considered to be a disaster-level wolf. But at the same time, 800 knew he couldn't really be too judgmental since he wasn't 800 at all. He was pretending to be C-Class rank 333, when in reality, he was B-Class rank 4, Mad Devil Yankee. The idea was that by disguising a hero to be weak when they were actually strong, and matching them up against a weak monster that was presented to be powerful, they'll be able to manufacture long-shot wins. The outcomes of these things were already predetermined. As he rushed in, Yankee thought to himself how he wasn't really a fan of bullying the weak, but really needed to sell this. He'd try not to beat the creature too much so that it would have a chance to hit him back. And when Yankee showed up and reeled back a fist, Shiver was absolutely terrified. With a smile on his face, Mr. McCoy was eager to see the hero provide a convincing performance. The major sponsor was also rooting for the hero. Again, Shiver was absolutely horrified, but responded with an insane fist that sent Yankee spiraling as it questioned if he was an enemy. Yankee was in utter disbelief. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The creature wasn't supposed to actually be strong. Not realizing that this wasn't just an act, Mr. McCoy and the sponsor were pleased by the display. Yankee was sent right into a heap of trash. This thing was incredibly strong. It couldn't possibly be a wolf-level monster. The damage he had suffered was so severe that Yankee began to pass out. His mind brought him back to the events that led to all of this. Inside Mr. McCoy's office, he was disturbed to know that the executives had people gambling on heroes. This was something he was very disturbed by, and the concept of him being used to rig the match illegally was even worse. Mr. McCoy expected this sort of reluctance, but insisted that the young hero do so anyways. It was something that could only be asked of heroes they deemed trustworthy enough to not share the truth, which was exactly the sort of potential he saw in Yankee. He even offered to compensate the man well. But considering this an insult to all heroes, Yankee angrily refused. Mr. McCoy kept cool though, and actually found the reaction to be humorous. He was content to see that the hero was a lot more serious than he looked. Mr. McCoy began reading the B-Class Heroes file. He was a famous delinquent in his hometown, but after seeing Moomin Rider in action, he decided to try and be a hero. A path that has thoroughly changed his life for the better. Wickedly, Mr. McCoy turned away from Yankee while speaking aloud about how proud the boy's sick mother in the hero hospital must be of her son. But wait, she had a surgery coming up soon, didn't she? With so many patients these days, Mr. McCoy was pretty sure that it was terrible there on the floor. He could only hope there wouldn't be any issues with her treatment. Now sweating, Yankee questioned if this was a threat, but Mr. McCoy, true to his name, played coy and wondered what Yankee could possibly mean by that. All he was saying was that the only reason Yankee's mother was able to receive this sort of expensive treatment at the hero hospital was on account of her son being a hero. Finally out of his chair, he would ask if Yankee was truly just going to take advantage of that and fail to fulfill his duties. Yankee grew stiff. Resting his hand on the hero's shoulder, Mr. McCoy reminded him that it's rather costly to support a hero's activities. He'd suggest that Yankee just see this as another way to protect and serve the people. With the conclusion of this flashback, Yankee finally woke back up. In a panic from being knocked out, Yankee cried out to headquarters wondering what was going on and why the monster was so strong. Mr. McCoy then reminded the hero that he was dealing with a disaster-level demon. He then urged him to avoid the creature's attacks as best as he could. The wealthy spectators were unhappy to see that the hero had gotten back up. Mr. McCoy, still failing to realize that the creature was in fact true to the false designation of demon level, simply believed that Yankee was an incredible actor. This only made him want to use the hero again at another point in time. Shiver then unloaded another furry flurry of blows onto the already broken hero. Shiver was truly a terrifying creature. As a chihuahua with the size to back up its infamously deranged mannerisms and behaviors, the mere act of being looked at unsettled it. Apparently, Shiver Wawa was monsterized on account of turning distortedly wild from extreme miniaturization. As a former lapdog, going outside causes it to rampage on account of its overwhelming fear and worry, which is comically accurate to the general disposition of the breed. Again, the creature attacked the helpless hero. One of the Hero Association agents was impressed by how convincing the hero was, while another was a bit concerned. He'd even questioned if the thing was truly just a disaster-level wolf, which the other agent was sure of. Apparently, they did a lot of high-intensity tests on it at headquarters, which definitely makes me feel a bit sorry for this thing. They clearly did not account for how the monster would behave in an entirely unfamiliar location. And if it wasn't already clear, the extra joke here is that Yankee is a boy who cried wolf level. Nobody believes he's actually in danger here. Yankee, now bleeding excessively, would think to himself that this had to be some kind of mistake. But after resolving himself to the task, Yankee admitted that it didn't matter anyway. Weak or strong, if he failed to do his job here, he'd lose it. And if that happened, he wouldn't be able to save his mother. Summoning all the courage and determination he could, Yankee knew that his only choice was to face the monster head on. Doing so, just like the hero he so admired, Moomin Rider. The scene he recalled being inspired by was a battle against Deep Sea King, which for me is really nostalgic to think about. Back when I only read One Punch Man through physical volumes, that entire situation was what made me truly fall in love with the series and think so fondly of it. So it's really nice to see an entirely new hero spawn from those events. Despite Shiver beginning to leave, Yankee got back on his feet and taunted it. In his mind, if the monster truly was this strong, it was all the more reason for him to stop it from escaping. Shiver began to sweat profusely with fear. It wondered why the hero was glaring at it despite it being such a cute little pacifist. In an instant, it continued to unload its fists onto what was now presumed to be truly its enemy. At the peak of its madness, the monster now believed it needed to kill all its enemies to bring about peace. As he took what looked to be his final breaths, Yankee realized that this ordeal must be a sort of divine punishment for participating in something as immoral as hero betting. He felt horrible for disgracing the spirits of the heroes that put their lives on the line. And with that, I think we can say that he has the principles of a truly great hero. He remembered cheering Moomin Rider on alongside several other civilians, believing that he had the hero's back within his sights. The crowd of gamblers were not concerned with the hero's well-being. They only cared about the money they'd lose if the guy somehow managed to be the underdog in all this. Nobody was betting on him, but Yankee would not stay down. Barely managing to stand at this point, Yankee issued one final message to headquarters. He was pretty certain that he wouldn't be able to win, so he'd asked them to tell his mother that he quit being a hero, moved to a city very far away, and got a real job. It was his final request. Shocked, Mr. McCoy agreed. He had no idea that Yankee could be such a great actor. Shiver began its barrage yet again as Yankee shared what would be his final battle cry. Or it would be if Saitama hadn't stepped in at the last possible moment to absolutely obliterate the monster in a single punch. Wondering who the hell let a dog like this loose? Yankee's jaw dropped. Both the sponsor and Mr. McCoy were in utter disbelief, as were all the gamblers. Saitama and Genos seemed to be on their way back home. Saitama, seeing Yankee's messed up face, wondered if the guy was alright. Yankee was speechless. He had been saved, but before he could get a word out, he passed out again. But just before he did, he began to remember Saitama's face. He remembered Saitama being there for the fight against Deep Sea King. Saitama was concerned about the guy, but suddenly, a familiar voice would be happy to see that Kate Baldy had already handled the situation. A face that Saitama was also happy to see. Now inside the bathroom, the major sponsor was infuriated by the fact that another hero had defeated the monster. He wondered what would happen to his bet and considered this a breach of trust. It's looking pretty rough for the Hero Association. They continued to dig their own grave, and now they're in the doghouse with even their secret financial backers. Everyone seems to have a bone to pick with them. Mr. McCoy could only apologize for the incident and promised to fetch and prepare the next game immediately. Mr. McCoy cursed Saitama's name for having messed things up, but thanks to this public event, Saitama's rank had risen from A-Class rank 39 to A-Class rank 29. If the association actually recognized it to be a disaster-level demon, he probably would have risen much higher. But since it was just a wolf in their eyes, he could only go so far. When he arrived along with the monster collection truck, Mr. McCoy berated Kate Baldy and Demon Cyborg for hitting the scene without orders, telling them that they needed to restrain themselves. Saitama just looked at Genos and wondered if they were really being yelled at for killing a monster. Considering it was a demon level, Genos believed that it should be a great accomplishment for his master. Mr. McCoy would sidestep and rationalize by saying that Papillon 800 greatly weakened the creature, so the majority of the credit should go to him. Meanwhile, Papillon 800 doesn't really exist, so Yankee's position will likely remain the same. All the while, Saitama wondered who the hell cares about credit anyway. But now, behind Mr. McCoy was Shout Emperor, who'd wonder if the executive was angry that his rigged game hadn't gone according to plan. Genos recognized the little hero as Mr. McCoy shook from the knowledge that he'd been found out. With that, he suddenly took his leave. Now the three heroes were left together as Shout Emperor explained what was really going on to them. He'd show them the secret hero gambling site that had odds for every hero. It all began to make sense to Genos, as he would sometimes notice strange disaster levels and hero ranks. He then rationalized it to be a controlling of the odds. Looking at the list, Saitama was absolutely infuriated. His odds had a 20 times multiplier, indicating the extreme unlikelihood that he would ever be the one to take down a monster. They were treating him like he was completely worthless, and that really pissed him off. According to Child Emperor, the dark side of the association was very deeply rooted, so he would continue to investigate. Genos would wonder why the child had decided to tell them all this. After a brief pause, Child Emperor admitted that it was because he felt bad about doubting Genos' claims before. But with a smile, Genos told him not to worry about it. Then, as tires whirled, we would see Yankee with his bruised face rested upon the very back he had been chasing along his hero path. Finally waking up, he couldn't believe his eyes. It was Moomin Rider. The hero was happy to see that Yankee was awake and would tell him that they were almost at the hospital. Apparently, Moomin Rider had been watching the broadcast and commended his fellow hero's strength. Yankee felt ashamed of himself, considering his rank and the monster's level were both lies. But unconsciously addressing the man's concerns, he'd tell him that the level didn't matter. He was amazed by how the hero was able to stand up and fight against a much stronger opponent without hesitating for even a second. The words of his hero touched Yankee as he began to cry, finally agreeing as they continued to ride off. That very night, Saitama struggled to get any sleep as he thought about himself on the gambling site. The next morning, he approached Genos wondering what would happen if he decided to bet on himself and defeat a monster. Hearing it repeated aloud, Saitama was quick to tell Genos not to get the wrong idea. Speaking purely hypothetically, he wondered if the best way to stop all this terrible gambling would be to force a house to lose a crazy amount of money. To this, Genos wondered if the house wouldn't just expand even further to try and earn the money back, which Saitama would nervously agree with while laughing. Seeing the odds be published, Saitama figured that a monster must have appeared. Jetting out of the door after putting on his hero costume faster than the Flash, Saitama called upon Genos to follow along. Racing towards the creature, two other heroes were shocked to see this level of diligence. Saitama was actually trying for a change. As they made their way over, he saw that the odds of him taking down the creature had risen even higher, from a 20 times multiplier to a 25 times multiplier. Now even more upset, Saitama seriously debated whether he should bet on himself or not. But just before he could, the most ridiculous purse snatching scene I have ever seen would occur as a race driver made off with one. Looking at the monster, then looking at the scene right in front of him, Saitama needed to make a choice. After taking down the driver, many people would stand around and clap for him. Seeing him cry so much, they all believed he must be a very good person. The woman who had been robbed would thank him, saying that there were keepsakes from her parents inside. As Genos informed his master that Tatsumaki had defeated the monster, Saitama could only say how happy he was for the woman he'd helped. Saitama would then think to himself, wondering if he was truly depressed by this outcome. Furthermore questioning if he was really just doing all this for the money. He was really close to becoming something unsavory and realized that gambling was pretty scary. But to interrupt this thought, the woman would pull out a massive diamond ring and offer it to the hero as a reward. Saitama was completely floored by this. But after tremendous hesitation, he'd do the heroic thing and tell her that he wasn't looking for a reward and returned it. It's kind of funny to see Saitama so hung up on money right after refusing to join the Neo Heroes, who'd promised to compensate heroes even better than the association was. Let us know what you think about the chapter in the comments below. This video was sponsored by War Thunder, the most comprehensive PvP vehicle combat game ever made. They're offering you a massive sign-up bonus, including premium account features and your very own Dakimakura. It's only available through this deal, so join today through the link in the video description. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.